So now that we have learned about Amanullah Khan, how he ruled over Afghanistan, and his downfall as a king, as a reformer, what's the most important thing that comes to mind for you?
I think what's important is how Amanullah is remembered in the popular imagination. I think.
Yeah. Do you think that needs to change?
It does need to change. And the reason it needs to change is that, like we've discussed, large sections and swathes of society came out in opposition to Amanullah more than once. Okay, to the extent that he went to his tribal heartland in Kandahar and couldn't really find much support beyond just some religious ulama who thought that his claim to the throne was legitimate, like Mawlawi Abdul Wasir. But beyond that, it really needs to be asked why a leader who was rebelled against and overthrown is remembered in such fond terms. Now, that isn't me saying that he should be vilified or that he should be ridiculed without due cause. What I am saying is that there's a level of suspicion I have as to why he in particular is venerated so highly.
Would you characterize him as a Pashtun nationalist?
I don't personally think Amanullah Khan was a Pashtun nationalist, but just because someone likes to exploit the grievances or the feelings of whichever ethnic group does not make them a nationalist of that ethnic group. By the same token, I could make a very good argument and say that Amrullah Saleh, who is from Panjshir, is a Pashtun nationalist. But it wouldn't make sense because he's not a Pashtun. So, there are a lot of, in my, at least the way that I see it, is that a Pashtun nationalist or a nationalist of any stripe or any color is someone that is, totally subsumed and believes entirely in the narrative, in the story, in the nationalist story. So I wouldn't say that Amanullah Khan is a nationalist, Pashtun nationalist, just as I wouldn't say that Amrullah Saleh is a Pashtun nationalist.
But did he try to impose Pashto language and Pashtun identity on non-Pashtuns during his reign?
Not that I'm aware of. I believe that the two official languages of Afghanistan were Pashto and Dari. And
is it true that he made sure that Pashto is recognized as one of the official languages?
I believe it was Tarzi that influenced him in that direction.
Okay. So, now we
but
have...
I mean, I wouldn't say, even if he did make Pashto the official language, I wouldn't say that that's a side of Pashtun supremacy, because Pashtun supremacy would mean Pashtun supremacy would mean one language is predominant over the other language. But if there are two languages, it indicates a semblance of equality, which by its very definition is not supremacy, because you can't have supremacy and equality in the same thing.
Yeah, let's just agree that he wasn't a Pashtun supremacist.
A lot of people would say that, the monarchy was Pashtun and Amanullah was a Pashtun, so was his grandfather and so was his great-grandfather. And my answer to that all of these monarchs were Pashtun, my answer to that is, well, obviously they were Pashtun. Because if you belong to the same family, a monarchy means that power stays within the same family. Okay? And families belong to the same ethnicity. So it's not like Amanullah was a Pashtun and his father was a Farsiwan and his grandfather was a Qizilbash. It doesn't work like that. In a patrilineal society, they're all obviously going to belong to the same ethnicity. I mean, it's common sense.
So we have another point that we need to explain, is that the opposition to Amanullah Khan wasn't a Tajik opposition.
No.
Ahmed-Waleed Kalakani might have been an ethnic Tajik, but opposition to Amanullah Khan was based on ethnicity.
Mm-hmm. Many, even his own Duranis.
What you see is that there is this false dichotomy between Habibullah Kalakani as the Tajik antithesis to the Pashtun nationalist Amanullah Khan. It doesn't make any sense.
I think the one way in which we can sort of make an analogy of the same sort is not with regard to Amanullah Khan, but with regard to General Nader Khan. Okay, because when General Nader Khan took over from Habibullah Kalakani after a 9-month reign as king, there was indeed an element of how can a non-Afghan be a king of Afghanistan? And we're talking about...
So Nader Khan used the ethnic card against
the ethnic card was used by Nader Khan, but it was also used by Habibullah Kalakani, who I believe said that with the money that I have in the treasury, I can make the Pashtuns dance like monkeys. So the using of the ethnic card is never a one-way street. It's never one-way traffic. And you can't deny that General Nader Khan did use Pashtun sentiment, and it was phrased in the way that how can a rebel, how can a bandit, how can someone of low birth, someone that's not educated, and on top of that, he isn't even Afghan. He's the king of Afghanistan and he's not even Afghan. And once again, when we're speaking about Afghan in the 1920s, we're referring to Pashtuns. So how can a non-Pashtun be a king of Afghanistan? But then there's also the fact that Habibullah Kalakani's reign, by all accounts, was pretty chaotic. Because once the treasury ran dry, his men resorted to raping and pillaging and looting the city of Kabul. So his reign was very brutal. It was short-lived. And it was quite devastating for Afghanistan as a country. When Nader Khan came back, he had there were years spent just to reconstitute the state because it was destroyed in the aftermath of Amanullah and Habibullah Khan.
Now that we have basically covered this point, we have to make an assessment of Amanullah Khan's modernism. There are certain books that I really suggest that people should read in order to understand modernity and progress. It's necessary to have a better understanding of how reforms and progress comes about, especially since the Enlightenment. And there is a book called Seeing Like a State. It's a book by James C. Scott. James C. Scott, the author of the book, he wrote this book to make people understand how people want to reform society, how people want to use the state, the power of the state, to bring about change, whether it's economic, social, or military change, and how that affects a society. And Seeing Like a State is a very important book for any proponent of very radical and drastic reform and change. Because in this book, the concept that Scott discusses in his book, it's called high modernism. And high modernism is when a ruler or an ideologue or a king or a president is convinced that he should bring about modernity in a very rapid and very radical way. Like you could describe Vladimir Lenin as a high modernist.
Joseph Stalin.
Basically, the communists, the communists in Soviet Union, what they did is they wanted to rapidly change a agricultural and feudal society into a modern society by way of brutal force of the state. So sending people to gulags, killing people, doing all sorts of inhumane things in order to change society, in order to make the lives of people better by making them suffer. So this concept, high modernism, is also something that we see in Afghanistan. Like a king, like Amanullah Khan, what he tried to do is, okay, I have obtained my independence. Now I am going to tax everyone because I need money. I'm going to conscript everyone to become my soldier. And all of that is necessary for me to emulate the great Western nation states with their fancy and elaborate palaces and whatnot. And this kind of high modernism often has very disastrous results. And this is why everyone who may be offended by the way we describe Amanullah Khan, instead of being offended by whatever I say or whatever Ahmed-Waleed Kakar says, I suggest you read the book of James Scott and try to understand why high modernism is not a good idea, why it doesn't work, and why it's bound to fail and result into catastrophe.
And I think it's relevant also. You mentioned brute force being used to re-engineer society in the light of the ruler. This is exactly what Mustafa Kemal's advice to Amanullah was. You need a unifying ideology and you need a strong military force to put down insurrections and reform society as you see fit. And Mustafa Kemal managed to do that successfully in Turkey. But we have to ask, how successful was he? Because a lot of the things that he stood for, a lot of the things that he initiated, we're seeing are being rolled back year on year. A lot of things that are currently happening in Turkey, you would have thought unimaginable 5-10 years ago, let alone in Mustafa Kemal's time. So we have to ask as to the effectiveness of it. And on top of that, just the sheer human misery that it causes. We really need to ask, is this the way that we want to go forth? And I think that's this leads into another topic as to what is the legacy of Afghan independence and Amanullah Khan. Now, one of them, I would say that Amanullah was not the first to initiate this. Okay, because I would say that his grandfather, Abdurrahman, re-engineered society by mass killing thousands of people from all different ethnic groups across the country. But Amanullah did it with more of an ideological flavor. Abdurrahman Khan did it primarily to secure his kingship and to make Afghanistan a stable state, whereas Amanullah did it, especially as we discussed in the latter stage of his reign, he did it with the ideological facet too. And we see that this is the method by which the Khalqis and the Parchamis come in the 70s and the 80s, and they try to re-engineer society in the same light. And not just the Khalqis and the Parchamis, also the Ikhwani inspired parties in Afghanistan also do the same thing. And now, lo and behold, where Afghanistan is currently not occupied by the US because the US has signed a peace agreement, but we also saw an attempt to re-engineer society with an ideological flavor in the aftermath and during the US invasion and occupation. So I would say that is one of the legacies, one of the holdovers from Amanullah Khan's reign. High modernism, like you said.
Yes.
Number two, I would say, is that, and this isn't exclusive to Afghanistan, Amanullah Khan tasking people like Mawlawi Abdul Wasi to come up with a series of codes by which a modern state could work and function in the Islamic framework, or where the Islamic framework could work in the context of a modern state. It depends on how you see this, because we could say that religion aids power or power aids religion. It depends on your perspective. This isn't something unique to Afghanistan, but in Afghanistan at least, and across the Muslim world, we are still confronted with the problem of modernity, the modern nation state, the Westphalian system, and Islam. And for anyone that's very interested in this, there's a book called The Impossible State by Wael Hallaq. where he essentially argues that the current Islamist parties or Ikhwan-based parties who want to Islamize the state cannot do so because there's a fundamental contradiction between the Western nation state and pre-modern Islamic modes of governance. So that is number two. The fact that we are still yet to discover a acceptable way in which religion and society and state can function side by side. Yeah. Why is this relevant, Sangar? Because even now, a couple of days ago, you tweeted out a video where you asked people to engage with you and asked what sort of system should we have in Afghanistan in the future? And a lot of the replies that I read in Pashto were, we want an Islamic system. Okay? Yes. Now, what kind of Islamic system do we want? There are many different systems we could call Islamic. It's a difficult question that needs to be answered, especially going into intra-Afghan negotiations. Number three, I would say, is Amanullah Khan set in place a precedent of a foreign-minded, a foreign-educated leadership and intelligentsia that doesn't represent what Afghans see as their values or Islamic values.
Yes.
Once again, we're going into intra-Afghan negotiations. What do we hear a lot? Afghani arzishtuna. Okay? Yeah. Afghan values need to be represented, not Western values, Afghan values.
Yeah.
Amanullah Khan, we could say, was the one that initiated this. Queen Soraya ripping off her hijab is not indicative of Afghan values.
Yeah.
Amanullah banning polygamy in Kabul is not indicative of Afghan values.
Yeah.
Even European architecture in Afghanistan does not reflect Afghan values.
The beard for a man is by consensus of the four schools of jurisprudence, schools of law. By consensus, men are not supposed to shave. Yes. There are difference of opinion about the length of the beard. So the Ahnaf
or even what constitutes a beard.
Yes, there may be a difference of opinion, but shaving the beard is considered as haram. Okay.
Yeah.
By consensus. This is one thing. The turban, the imama, is sunnah. It is following the examples of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Prophet Muhammad.
Yeah.
So these things are not just a matter of culture or custom. These are religious matters, like you have the Hasidic Jews who wear a certain hat and they don't shave their beards. Nobody is going to say, oh, these Hasidic Jews, they're just following a certain cultural tradition.
They see it as intrinsic to their religion.
But the same thing applies to Muslims. The beard in Islam, especially in Afghanistan, a Hanafi country, according to Hanafi madhab, the beard, shaving the beard is a sin.
Yeah.
Okay? But yet in Afghanistan, we had a ruler who not only told that women should remove their veils, but he told my grandfathers, who we are from Kabul, that we couldn't, my ancestors couldn't enter the city before wearing Western clothes. Okay, so this kind of contempt for religion, for Islam, for people's values and beliefs, this is also a very significant signal you are giving to your people. Like, look,
exactly.
I don't have respect for you, for your values, for your traditions, nothing. You need to submit to whatever I want.
And it's also worthy to note here that the Musayban dynasty that started with Nadir Khan and then Zahir Shah and Dawood Khan and that branch of the Ahmed-Waleed family, a lot of them were sort of a similar temperament and mindset of Amanullah. They didn't grow beards. They liked Western suits. They weren't generally seen in turbans. But they actually unveiled their women publicly. They encouraged it. But what they didn't do was impose it. Amanullah actually imposed it. So they learned from Amanullah's lesson, but tragically, after the Musayban, after Dawood Khan was overthrown in a coup, we went back to the Amanullah form of reform.
Yes.
Which was, in fact, it was actually worse, because anyone seen dressed in the clothes that we're dressed in right now would be seen as suspect and carried off to Pulacherchi to be tortured by Khad and buried in a mass grave.
Yeah.
We know this. This is well documented. So,
and this is important to note that the proponents of progress and reform and enlightenment, in order to achieve their goals, they're willing to cause this kind of, devastation. Yes.
Yeah. And so I would say that that's number 3. That's the third legacy that Amanullah has left us today. A breed of nationalism that says that it is for Afghan culture or for Pashtun culture and claims to want to represent it around the world by people that generally like to shave their beards, that generally like to avoid headgear or turbans, that generally like to wear Western suits. And not only is it a matter of preference, they actually have a disdain for native dress and native, forms of communication. I've even heard that Amanullah told people that they should take off their hats to each other instead of hugging, because this is how civilized people interacted. Number 4, in terms of the legacies that Amanullah has left Afghanistan, is no financial or economic independence.
Yes.
Afghanistan was not independent. Amanullah, the reason that he went on a 9-month tour was to gain investment and aid from European countries, amongst them France, Germany, Italy, and Britain. During the Musaiban years, Afghanistan's national budgets for annual budgets were drawn largely from aid from the Soviet Union, from America, from Japan, from Germany. Afghanistan does not have and has not had any meaningful economic independence since Amanullah's time. And this isn't something that started with Amanullah, but it started with Afghanistan as an independent country. Okay? Amanullah inaugurated an economically dependent but politically independent Afghanistan. But you can't have political independence if it's not underpinned by economic independence. And rather than finding genuinely good ways, useful ways to raise tax revenue, he ended up, like we discussed, instead trying to build Dar Laman, which reflects his own temperament. And number 5, on the legacies that we have left over, is the Durand Line. Amanullah recognized the Durand Line, and specifically with regard to the Wazirs and the Mahsuds and the other tribes of Waziristan, or in North and South Waziristan, or on both sides of the border, they've negatively been affected by the Durand Line, specifically the Wazirs and the Mahsuds in Waziristan, who we can say, wherever you lie on the political spectrum, they haven't really had it good on the other side of the Durand Line. And they fought for Afghanistan in the Third Anglo-Afghan War. They've been left on the other side of the Durand Line, and their situation since then has not been one that someone can envy, and neither has Afghanistan's.